Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Charlie Huntington and I am the Public Relations Chairperson for Pennsylvania Bio. Pennsylvania Bio is a statewide industry trade association for the biotech, medical device, and healthcare IT industries, as well as the CRO industry. Tonight we're going to continue our special series on life science leaders in our local community. But before we get started, I want to let you know that from time to time, financial issues relating to life science, healthcare, or technology matters or companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should be not viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may be dated or may no longer be current. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm pleased to have with me as my co-host tonight, Kimon Hatza. Kimon is a business attorney and partner at MillCrest Law, LLP in Radnor, Pennsylvania. His focus is in the life science, healthcare, and information technology areas. Welcome, Kimon.
Thank you, Charlie. Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Can you let our viewers know what MillCrest has been up to since we last did the show together?
Sure, be happy to. Well, we continue to focus in the areas of technology. My partner Ron he does a lot in renewable energy, and I focus myself principally in technology in the life sciences area, also in the healthcare area. Our practice has been expanding beyond those areas. We haven't been seeing a lot of M&A activity since we were last together on the show, but we are seeing a lot of corporate activity generally. And when Ron and I started this practice about a little more than 5 years ago now, we were both, between us, probably had 50 years of experience in large law firms. We were banking on the fact that there were a lot of people out there who wanted the sophistication of attorneys that practiced at a very high level in large law firms, but didn't want the price tag associated with it. And what we thought would be the case has really borne itself out, and we've been very pleased. So we do continue to focus in the areas I mentioned, but now we've gone beyond to a lot of different industries as well.
Good for you, and congratulations on the success.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Charlie. Appreciate it.
As you know, we have a very busy show tonight, so I want to get to our guest.
Okay.
Tonight's special guest is Tom Bliss. Tom is CEO of Genisphere, which we'll hear more about in a few minutes. He also worked for Kyocera, where he was the head of business development, services and planning. Before that, he was chief executive officer at Therachine, which is a development stage drug delivery company headquartered in Berlin, Germany. He has been with Amgen. He was a head of international licensing operations, and as well as China and India research. He also spent time at Baxter as head of their biopharmaceuticals, did business development in their bioscience division. He has an MBA from Wharton, and he has a degree in English, Asian Studies, specifically Mandarin, from Dartmouth College. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Charlie. Thanks, Kimon.
Can you tell us about nanomedicine, please, Tom?
Sure. Well, the promise of nanomedicine is that in the arc of life sciences, a lot of complications and diseases manifest at the nano scale. And so as we look to address complications and diseases, it makes sense that we should begin to address them therapeutically at the nano scale. And that's the very high level promise of nanomedicine. So addressing big problems by getting smaller, in effect. So it's really just a scale question. But that's where it fits into the larger arc of life sciences.
Okay, and where did Genisphere come from?
Genisphere is really the life's work of the two co-founders, and I often say to the board, I feel incredibly blessed to work with these two guys. I call them Einstein and Solomon because Bob Getz is a super genius who's really made working with DNA his life's work, and so he is our Einstein. And Jim Kadushin is our Solomon. He has the judgment of Solomon, having run laboratories all the way back to his time in the 70s at Case Western Reserve University, coming to Philadelphia to run GeneTrack before Polyprobe, and then ultimately Genisphere. So he knows everything about the commercialization of reagents, tools, and diagnostics, and is a great complement to Bob's genius on the research side.
Tom, when we met a number of months ago now, originally to talk about the show, you used a really wonderful example about mailing a letter. It was in the context of explaining, I guess, physician dosing and protecting against or reducing the possibility of toxicity in connection with dosing. Would you mind sharing that story with our viewers?
Sure. You always have to be careful with analogies, of course. So I'm hesitant to take any analogy too far. But we all know that direct marketing has evolved over time. Originally, direct marketers would choose you based on the type of credit card you carry and maybe your zip code. And now they're using big data to get more and more refined. The same is true of targeted therapeutics. So, for example, whereas in the past you might have received an envelope from your local Cadillac dealership because of your zip code and income level and the credit card you carry, so we would say targeted therapy has become more specific over time. With the advent of biologics and specific sites of interdiction of disease, you've had this greater specificity. We're the next stage in targeted therapy because we can deliver to a specific site of disease in the body, and that's what multivalency means. It means that we can use a targeting moiety and then also attach a payload therapeutic. So we're able to address some of the shortcomings of the current therapeutics that are very good at site interdiction, but then may not have the payload to deliver at that site. In some of our studies, we've shown 25 to 30% accumulation at the disease site, which is really a very, very high level. So again, to extend the analogy, we not only know that you might be in the market for a Cadillac, we know when you're walking out the door and about to go purchase one.
You know, you say that, and I don't want to get too far afield here, but I get on my computer. I go to 3 websites. Right. The next time my computer opens up, there's advertisements relating to the 3 websites that I specifically had been on like the prior time. It's unbelievable. Really.
It is amazing how and we are definitely part of that same phenomenon. That's why when we talk about targeted therapies, I'm always quick to follow up with the question, well, what does targeted therapy mean to you? Because it is getting more specific all the time, and and the need to also deliver a potent payload to a specific address is another issue that is very much coming to the fore, not just at nanoscale, but more broadly. So the ability to deliver combinations. Our scaffold allows you to deliver combinations in concert. So they're working together, both in selecting the right address and then delivering the right payload for the job.
That's great.
Funding has been a challenge for many of the guests we've hosted on the show. Can you tell us how you've funded yourselves to date, and then what are the near-term and future funding challenges look like if you do have
Absolutely.
funding challenges?
Well, we're very lucky. Well, I think anybody who said that they don't have funding challenges is either naive or they haven't been in the saddle long enough.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate, though, in that we have corporate fuel partners as a sort of big brother overseeing us. They have organized our group of some 40 investors and established the Genisphere LLC. Corporate Fuel Partners Association with Genisphere goes back to the time when it was being spun out of Datascope. So molecular tools and reagents was just too far afield for Datascope. And so when they were looking to spin it off, again, I credit Bob Getz and Jim Kadushin, the 2 founders, in finding Corporate Fuel. And Corporate Fuel bought it through a management buyout purely on the basis of the diagnostics business.
Okay.
No sooner had that business begun to pay itself off and also deliver with licenses to the likes of Affymetrix and other reagents and tools leaders, if you will, then the inference was made that, hey, if we're transporting molecular entities through physiological boundaries and into cells, it stands to reason that those molecular entities could be therapeutics. And beginning with a confirmatory study that we conducted initially with Penn Medicine and then later with Lankenau, we were able to really pivot the company to therapeutics and drug delivery. And that's when Corporate Fuel decided to double down, and we went from, at that time, 20 investors to now nearly 40 investors. They created an LLC, and we have the benefit of having a partner who operates as our part-time CFO. So we get a very high-caliber individual helping us, that's Russ Fine, on the CFO side, and yet he's also a partner at Corporate Fuel who behaves like a big brother when it comes to organizing our financings.
That's great.
Hoping not to overlap too much with what you just said, but where specifically did the technology for Genisphere come from?
Sure, absolutely. So I mentioned that working with DNA has really been Bob Goetz's life work, and I'm happy to say that technology is essentially unencumbered. Now, going forward, applying the technology, we will have to, we really have two paths that we can take the technology down. One is the licensing path, and then the other is developing pharmaceuticals on our own account using the delivery system. We set our strategy last summer, right in the middle of our last raise of about $4 million, and we decided we would validate the technology with partners. And I'm delighted to share with you that we're well down that path to validating the technology. And this is where we take the payloads and targeting moieties of partner companies. We work with them typically under an MTA-like structure, and then once they generate their own data, sometimes initially mirroring data we've already generated, sometimes they go straight to payloads of their own, payloads and targeting moieties of their own. Once they've generated data with our scaffold, they become believers, if you will. And then we can get into longer-term work plans, research work plans, and then options and licensing. And I'm happy to say we're well embarked on that path. The second method, of course, would be to develop a pharmaceutical portfolio of our own. And from that, we have two choices, I would say. There's the public domain, that is pharmaceuticals that have gone off patent, and then there is the novel therapeutic path. And we have a lead candidate in each right now. You asked about Lankenau earlier, and Lankenau has been operating as our partner on the oncology therapeutic area expertise side, as well as on the other infrastructure and medical side. I mentioned our collaboration with Professor Janet Sawicki on SIHUR. She was able to take the construct that we developed for her and achieve terrific results that were, again, recently published in Cancer Research. And then also from the public domain, we developed what we consider a third-generation doxorubicin. This is a 3-DNA dox targeted with FA. Also, we've targeted it with G8, a G8 antibody for POC following cataract surgery. So we believe there's a great utility for a next-generation doxorubicin, particularly if it's targeted and features less toxicity.
For those of our viewers who aren't expert in the pharmaceutical field, could you break that down just a little bit?
Sure.
For more of a layperson
Sure.
level?
Absolutely, that's very fair. We have a scaffold, and without going into the specifics of the scaffold, it looks a lot like the iconic double helix. We make a monomer that has open ends that are called 3 and 5 primes, but nothing scary scientific about that. We make them in groups of 5 per layer. Once we've layered it, it looks almost like a tree branch, but a very, if you will, a symmetric tree branch. The open ends, what we call 3 and 5 primes for the chemists out there, allow you, it becomes like a scaffold that is very elegantly and neatly and repeatably, I should say, and predictably, you can then put drugs on the scaffold. So that allows us to deliver 2 antibodies at a time. It allows us to deliver a small molecule with an antibody target. So if you're a layperson and you're wondering, okay, a small molecule is typically a synthetic chemical-based pharmaceutical. An antibody is, in a sense, a living built from a cell line, and it has that iconic Y shape, if you will. So imagine the iconic double helix in a branch structure with Ys and in some cases they'd be represented almost like dots, small molecules embedded in the structure. That's very much one of our doxorubicin candidates. In other cases, we'll have our branch structure with different types of Ys hanging off it. We've recently demonstrated the ability to deliver even 3 types of antibody. So one to pass through a physiological boundary, a second for a specific disease site interdiction, and then a third as a payload, if you will. So you can think of that as the 1, 2, 3 punch therapeutically if you're thinking of combination therapies.
Okay.
Did I answer your question at all? Come on, it's a little hard for me to get away from the jargon.
No.
Candidly speaking.
I know. I was following what you were saying, but I was hoping that we could, certainly for those who are watching that weren't familiar with some of that jargon, that to get an understanding of what it is you're actually doing with your scaffold.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, again, if I were to take it to an even higher level, I would say we all recognize that giving therapy in combination is, again, as much part of the arc as giving therapy at the micro and now nano scale, right? Diseases and health complications tend to occur at that scale, even down to the cellular level. So if you can not only, if you can create a therapeutic that gets access to that compartment and then delivers the goods, then you're going, right there at that site of the complication, the site of the disease, then you're going to have a winning solution.
Tom, you live in Los Angeles, yet your company's based in Philadelphia. Why is it in Philadelphia? And tell us about what you found in this area that keeps a company here.
Absolutely. So, well, we're blessed with a terrific facility that, again, I mentioned Jim Kadushin and his operating prowess. So he built that facility from the dirt up. And we were bequeathed it as part of the Datascope, the management buyout led by Corporate Fuel Partners and Jim and Bob from Datascope. So that facility, we've essentially set it up to do everything that we need to do in that facility, from manage the ongoing diagnostics business, including the licenses to Affymetrix, to doing the kinds of conjugation and research that we are continuing to do today, more for the therapeutics business. And the business has always been located in Philadelphia, right on City Line Avenue at PCOM originally, and then in Hatfield for quite a bit of time, long before I arrived. As regards my arriving here from Los Angeles, I'm happy to say I was talking with Corporate Fuel Partners last year. They were in the throes of adding directors and adding some more pharmaceutical and drug delivery heft to the board when I learned of the CEO search. And of course, as soon as I learned of the CEO search, I said, yes, please.
Good for you.
And I said that I could work it. I can't recommend a Los Angeles commute, Philadelphia commute. I really.
I'm familiar with the flight.
You know the flight. Having said that, Philadelphia is an amazing life sciences city.
Yeah, tell us about your interaction with Pennsylvania Bio in particular.
Well, PA Bio is exactly the type of organization. They set up a show like this, and my interactions with Chris Molyneux and Karen DeLone in particular, they're such great champions for us, and they extend every connection they possibly can to keep the life sciences community talking and to also extend the contacts where relevant. So I've really been incredibly amazed by the presence of PA Bio, by their breadth and their willingness to extend themselves on behalf of the companies here. So we see a great future for Genisphere in Pennsylvania. And for me personally, I do have some ties. You mentioned Wharton at the outset, so it's great to be on one of the home teams in the sense that we're right in the backyard of University of Pennsylvania. We are one of the founding sponsors of CT3N, which is a therapeutic delivery seminar series that is out of Penn Medicine. And Professor Vladimir Muzikantov is our main point of contact there and continues to be an academic collaborator. So that's been tremendous. And I would say from an ecosystem, it's really hard to imagine an area anywhere in the world, in fact, that is more gifted in terms of life sciences talent than the Philadelphia area. Our proximity to Washington and the regulators is also a big plus.
That's great. Thank you.
Tom, what would success look like for Genisphere?
Sure. That's a great question. So we have managed to commercialize reagents, tools, and diagnostics, and we have a nice little business that we believe will continue to march forward. We're validating the technology as a licensing business model right now, where we take our scaffold and we structure the targeting moieties and payloads of our partners. And I'm pleased to say that we're well embarked on that path. Without jinxing myself, I would say that we recently completed a term sheet and are headed to contract. So perhaps by the time this show airs, we will have actually completed that and made an announcement. More importantly, it's not just one, but we are working with several large and medium and even small biopharma partners to validate the technology with their payloads and targeting moieties. Thirdly, we will, as I mentioned, both from the public domain and also from novel research, develop a therapeutic portfolio of our own. That's where we'll get to eventually. Obviously, at a time when we are better resourced and can, rather than borrow from a partner organization like Lankino, as we're currently doing, rather than borrow that medical expertise and that infrastructure, have infrastructure of our own and be able to develop from the public domain and also from novel therapeutics. So that's the future for Genisphere, if you will.
Okay.
You have lectured at places like UCLA. You also mentioned your connections to Penn as well. There are many in this area, unfortunately, who have been displaced by big pharma, and some of those folks have reinvented themselves within the biotech community or the CRO community or the medical device community.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for a senior pharma person
Sure.
who may consider entrepreneurship at this point out of necessity?
Sure. Well, absolutely. It may be the greatest gift that they've ever received, really, to have that opportunity. Innovation is absolutely everywhere, and it really is. It's fascinating. Again, as also a Johnson & Johnson alum, starting right here in Fort Washington with McNeil, and then, not surprisingly, given my banking background out of New Brunswick, doing the licensing and acquisitions out of the Treasury Group for the whole executive committee. The sense that innovation is occurring literally everywhere, but will be easiest to set on the path to commercialization where you have a strong infrastructure like Philadelphia. That is a tremendous opportunity. So if you're blessed enough to be possessing that skill set, then there should be ample opportunity for you to participate in this entrepreneurial industry. I guess if I were giving advice to a specific person, I would look at where they sit around the table. I've always thought of business development as a round table discussion, if you will, and everybody sitting around the table should have a specific functional contribution to the team.
Right.
And when you allow somebody to speak in their area of expertise, the decision almost makes itself. It's amazing to see a decision come together as you go from the therapeutic expert individual to the preclinical, to the toxicology, to the DMPK, and you pass it around the table, and slowly the picture emerges before everybody's eyes. And it's that kind of expertise that's badly needed on any team. So that's the advice I would give them.
You have experience with many of the areas where, if you look around the country, Philadelphia is one of the areas it's sort of a hub for some of the industry we talked about here, biotech and pharma and med devices and healthcare IT. Some of the others would be Boston and San Diego and San Francisco, Research Triangle Park. If you look at the biggest challenges that you think we may have here in the Philadelphia area, what would those be?
Sure. Well, ironically, and I say ironically because we all know Philadelphia is a big money management center, and without running off the names of the banks and financial institutions that manage money, we know that it's absolutely enormous here, and there are some globally famous names that are managed in the greater Philadelphia area. Ironically, it seems to be harder to raise money here than some of the other locations. San Francisco and Boston, notably, are the areas which seem to have a relatively easier time. Now, they might say that there are reasons for that, and I certainly don't wish to take anything away from them. Having a whole number of Cambridge and Waltham-based venture capitalists certainly helps, and the same is true of the Bay Area. Of course, the Bay Area is a much bigger area than the Boston area, which the Boston area, amazingly, is commutable in about 20 minutes from from one end to the other.
128 corridor.
Right, which is really
Cambridge.
truly amazing to me. My impression, though, if you were to make more capital available, and I'm not talking about spreading it willy-nilly, but if you were to make more capital available to the Philadelphia area companies, you would not only get a more robust cluster, but you would earn some returns. Again, because of the infrastructure comments I made earlier, you get technologies, therapeutic candidates on the right path to commercialization. You assemble the talent that is here in abundance, and you will have some success and deliver the kind of investment returns venture capital investors are looking for.
So when you look at this nanomedicine and you look at sort of where the puck is going by way of what the insurers are willing to pay for, how far have we come in terms of personalized medicine, if you will? I mean, is that going to be something that, would you say it's here now? Would you say we need 5 years to swallow this? Or where are we in terms of what is reimbursable and what's not?
Sure. That's a great question. I wouldn't presume to have the crystal ball when it comes to pharmaceutical pricing. However, neither would I presume to say that everything is going to be addressed therapeutically and therefore putting surgery out of business. As we all know, 50% of cancers are still addressed surgically. What's really interesting is we recently, and I forgot to mention, we recently doubled down with Penn Medicine by establishing a collaborative research agreement, or CRA as it's commonly known. If you read that press release, you'll see that we are being used in a procedure that includes a device and then a procedure that also includes another device and a therapeutic and a targeting agent all in one procedure. So there is a good example of harmonization. And if anything, I see a potential harmonization of these different types of therapy as well as devices going forward. And then as regards pricing, absolutely, the days of being able to get an approval and then administer to a very broad group of patients without monitoring the impact afterwards are certainly past us. But that's a good thing, because we don't want to give anybody the impression that there are no unmet medical needs. There are certainly plenty of unmet medical needs. Going forward, if we continue to be vigilant about approved medicines and make sure that they're getting to the patients who will respond to them, then we've still got quite a bit of work left ahead of us.
Tom, thank you. We're out of time. You've been a great guest. So really appreciate you being here and traveling from Los Angeles to make it happen. So
thank you very much, Charlie. It's really been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Kimon, as always, great guest host.
Thank you, Charlie.
We'll see you next time. And before I sign off, I want to remind our viewers that Money Matters is now available on iTunes. The video is available on our YouTube channel as well as our website. And I want to remind viewers that next week we're going to have an attorney with us, Robert Bavarnik. He's from Philadelphia. He's going to be covering business transactions and litigation. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on Money Matters.